was coming. You knew this was coming the moment this got announced. If you remember 3 years ago, when they announced that the title of this movie was going to be Batman v Superman, I was like, oh my god, they're finally gonna do it. They're finally gonna have these two titans fight it out on the big screen. We've seen them fight in, like, other mediums, like, like the cartoons and such, but nothing to an extent of a live action film. And we finally get that. Did it deliver? I'm about to talk about that myself. Without going into any spoilers, I do want to say that 65% of the movie is, at the very least, not action-based, and 35% of it is. So, if you're going into this movie thinking, oh man, Superman and Batman, they're gonna fight it out and shit, you might be a little disappointed that there's not as much action in the movie as you would have hoped. And that is kind of a letdown, but at the same time, I'd rather sacrifice, like action set pieces for, the overall of the story. It is a little bit slow at times, pacing's a bit off here and there, but for what we got, I mean, Ben Affleck, spot on. I think he is probably the rendition of Batman, the best rendition of Batman that we have gotten. And I'm just saying that because I thought Christian Bale was, like, top tier, but Ben Affleck, to me, is he the definitive Batman? And I'm going to say, yeah, he is. He's probably just a little bit, he's like a little bit leagues and above Christian Bale, but that's just me. Henry Cavill as Superman, I mean, Man of Steel, he proved what he had to do, and his acting chops in here are great. Amy Adams as Lois Lane, I mean, how wrong could you get there with her character? And I will discuss her bits, like, when we go into the spoiler bits, but Amy Adams did a good job as Lois Lane. And, Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, that surprised me. That really, really surprised me, because when I first heard her, I was like, I wasn't like, okay, like, she's gonna ruin the movie. I was like, let's see. Because it was the same thing with the Ben Affleck situation, where I was like, I think people are reacting a little bit too soon. Let's just wait for the movie to come out, and let's see just how the acting chops are. And both Ben Affleck and Wonder Woman, Gal Gadot, they surprised me. They really, really surprised me. And I thought they did an amazing job. Jesse Eisenberg, on the other hand, I'm a little bit skeptical on. And I'll go more in depth with him when it came to his part of the movie. But overall, as far as, like, my experience goes with the movie and how my preferences are, I think, without going into any spoiler territory, the movie itself, I believe, because originally I was going to give it an amazing, but thinking about it right now, I believe the movie is probably, well, actually, yeah, I would probably go out of my way and say the movie's a great plus. It's not amazing, it's not amazing plus, it's not break the scale. As much as I wanted it to be up there, it did have its problems, because part of it did kind of feel like a Justice League setup movie, rather than, like, a story focused on Batman v Superman. But at the same time, I think it had a good balance of both of them. I know some people are going to be like, oh, it's like, like, why are we getting all this shit? And again, part of the reason is because, DC's falling behind as far as the cinematic universe goes. Because if you look at where Marvel's been, they're leaps ahead of them, so they got to catch up in some capacity. How they kind of established the Justice League in this, as far as, like, cameo sections go, it's a little jarring, but again, I'll get more in depth with it, like, in just a few minutes. But for what we get for a Batman v Superman movie, to me personally, it was a great movie. It's not amazing. It's not amazing plus. It's not break the scale. The film definitely has its problems. Don't get me wrong. The film has its problems. But for me, the pros by a long shot outweigh any con that I have for the movie. And that's pretty much it on my non-spoiler section for those of you that wanted to know anything about the movie without seeing it. Now I'm going to get into the bits of spoiler section. The way how this movie opens up, kind of re-showing the events of Man of Steel when Zod was coming in and Superman was trying to take him down from the perspective of Bruce Wayne, I really like that. That was probably one of the best ways to open up the movie. And I know some people are going to be like, oh my god, why are we seeing this shit again from Man of Steel? Why? Why? It's important because you need to establish this Batman in this universe. And when you look at some of the shit that, that Bruce Wayne sees, because what he's seeing is an alien causing destruction. And mind you, when Man of Steel first came out, everybody's complaining about the movie. It was like, yeah, there's a whole bunch of this destruction, and that's exactly what we see through Bruce Wayne's perspective. Is like Superman, this alien, is destroying the city, even though he's trying to do what he thinks is best. He's like, look, that son of a bitch brought the war to us. That's the best way how he describes it. He's like, look, if we aren't at 100% at our fullest, then the entire human race is gonna be extinct. And, from Batman's perspective and his ideology of taking down Superman, it makes sense, and I really like that. And what I also really love is how they established his origin story, because, come on, we all know what happens with Batman and how he becomes it. His parents die, he gets depressed, and, at a certain point, he becomes Batman in the future, you using that as a reference. And we do get it, but I think it's done in the best way that it's possibly done in film. Like, I've liked it how it was done in the Nolanverse, but how the story was presented with that particular aspect, I really, really liked it. I really did. And, shortly jumping from there, going to the scene of Metropolis, I believe that first maybe 15-20 minutes of the movie were great. We cut to, 18 months later, and we get a shot in Africa. And one of the few things I was kind of wondering about when it came to Man of Steel, going back to that movie, the introduction of kryptonite. Because we all know Superman's big weakness was kryptonite, and in Man of Steel, godlike, but like he was basically, a superhero without any sorts of weaknesses whatsoever. And this movie, they introduced kryptonite, and like they find what to me it kind of looked like a Kryptonian like shell. In my personal opinion, I'm not specifically sure what the best way to describe it was, but. And, when they open it, they see, like, this glowing green rock. Me, as a fan, I'm like, oh my god, that's kryptonite. That is kryptonite. And, kryptonite being Superman's big weakness. And I thought about it, and I'm like, oh my god, they're gonna go. They're gonna go with the whole showing Superman's big weakness aspect was, with kryptonite. And the way how kryptonite was played out in the movie, I thought it was used effectively. Because, with the introduction of kryptonite, you get the aspect of, again, Batman having his reasoning for fighting Superman is justified. And him using kryptonite, I believe, was the best way to go about it. Because using kryptonite and discovering what it can do, as what Lex found out, it can pretty much damage the Kryptonian. More specifically, like, when they were examining Zod's body. And throughout the movie, when you see Superman having that, exposure to kryptonite, his powers drop like insanity. I'm not sure what the best way to describe it is, but yeah, it drops. And when he and Batman, when they eventually have their fight, because the movie just kind of builds up to the fact that they have their fight. And, at first Superman kind of has a stronger heel in the fight, but then once the exposure to kryptonite hits, it's like, oh my god, like, they are on, like, equal terms. Batman continues to just weaken Superman to a point, and, again, just how that was used I thought that was done pretty well. Introduction of Kryptonite. Now, the aspect of Superman and why he's fighting Batman, that's the part where I'm like, okay, I'm a little bit iffed out on that, because I thought, because based on how the movie was going, I thought they were going to go the route of, look, he's a vigilante, he's causing all this, trouble with people living in fear. And I thought that was going to be the big reason as to why Superman was going to fight Batman, being like, look, what you're doing is a little too rough around the edges. Lighten up a bit. And considering with what happened, the big reason why Superman fights Batman is because, his mother, Martha, got kidnapped by Lex Luthor, and Lex Luthor's like, good. Now, heed to my will and fight Batman and kill him. Once you do that, I will release your mother free. Like that's the type of route it goes to. And I'm like, okay, like, that to me was kind of weak, but at the same time, I bought into it because I was like, okay, yeah, I get why Superman would do this, because, he lost his father in Man of Steel, and just going through that phase of losing another parent, he knew that wasn't what he wanted to do. And I know what some people are going to be like, oh, but he could have saved him. He could have saved Martha. And that's the thing. Despite being a superhero, you gotta look at the human qualities too. And that's one of the few things I really love about the movie is, Superman's love for humanity. Like, it really shows out here. Especially, with his relationship with Lois Lane. And getting into her character, which we'll get in shortly. To wrap up my thoughts on Superman as a character, I like the direction that they went in. Kind of iffed out on the fact of, using Martha Kent being kidnapped as a plot point for him to fight Batman, but for what it was, I was like, okay, like, I'll buy into it because, if you're looking at it from his perspective and what he went through losing his dad, it kind of makes sense. And also, like, people are just, like, they're just, like, shitting on Superman throughout the movie. Because some people are just, like, calling him the false god. Some people are like, no, he's our savior, he's righteous. And the scene at the Senate, in D.C., when they're about to have that conversation, the building blows up, and Superman is blamed for that destruction. He's like Superman, some hero, something like that. That's what I feel like, because there was something like that. It's like, Superman, a hero, give me a break. And, it's showcasing, like, the down aspects of what Superman is. And this is where kind of Lois Lane comes into play. Because despite all of that, there's two people in his life that, that are still rooting for him. His mother, who's amazing, by the way, and Lois Lane. Lois Lane kind of is where the film kind of has my gripe on me, because I really loved what they did with her in Man of Steel, and I thought that was the best rendition of Lois Lane we got. She still has those aspects in the movie, but I feel like here she's kind of been reduced to the typical love interest that gets kidnapped and stuff. That's just me. Whereas in the first one, like, she was more upfront, she was more front and center about, like, fighting alongside Superman, and you get that here, but, I feel like, the typical love interest aspect kind of shined more on her aspect than, what she was able to do in Man of Steel, in my personal opinion. Now, that doesn't mean that was a bad thing, but and it's like I said before, she has her moments where she's upfront, like finding out about the chip that was, on the bulk, like, who planted this, and, so she still has her upfront moment. It's just, like I said, damsel in distress aspect kind of shines a little more than her upfront aspects, in my personal opinion. But Amy Adams doing her thing, like I said, she did an amazing job. Ben Affleck, Henry Cavill, same thing. Now let's get into the aspect of Lex Luthor. Now, this isn't your typical, like, serious boss man type Lex Luthor. He does have those moments in the movie, but he's kind of a joke. That's the thing. Like, Lex Luthor is just kind of a joke in the movie. And if you've read the comics, you've seen the cartoons, Lex Luthor is not really all about, like, like clowning around and stuff. He's like, the red capes are coming. The red capes are coming. Which line was good, but how it was executed in the film, I'm like, I don't know. And I think Jesse Eisenberg, like, him being a little goofy the way he was, I thought he could have done a little bit better, in my personal opinion. He wasn't bad. I think he did good for what he was given, but it could have been done well. So for me, Jesse Eisenberg is kind of 50-50. You might like it or you might hate it. I'm just somewhere in the middle where I didn't find him annoying, but I didn't find him amazing either. So I'm somewhere in the middle when it comes to his character. I'm somewhere in the middle when it comes to his character. And getting all the stuff with his mother too. I really like, how Superman's mother connected with with Batman because Superman's mother's name is Martha. And when the fight goes on between Batman and Superman, like Batman's about to kill him, and the minute Superman mentions Martha, like Bruce Wayne kind of is like, wait a minute, what? Like what? Like what does that name mean? What does the name Martha mean? And then Lois comes out and says, it's his mother. It's his mother. And Superman's like, she needs to be saved. She has to be saved. And bringing, using that as a plot point and bringing those two together, you know what? Some people might have their complaints about it. I thought it worked. I thought that was probably like the best way for them to kind of have their, to have their resolution and, to team up and stuff. I was like, okay, cool. I like it. And how, Batman goes about it and saving her. Like, if we're talking about the live action films from, Tim Burton, Joel Schumacher to Christopher Nolan, this Batman does not give two shits whatsoever what happens because the goody two-shoes Batman that everybody's used to seeing, yeah, like no guns, no killing from prizes. Yeah, you don't see that aspect here. You see probably the brutal, like the most brutal Batman, most broken Batman we've ever seen in live action, and I really appreciate that. Getting to the fight between Batman and Superman itself, and I've mentioned it throughout the review, I think there's only one fight. Let me just say that right now. There's only one fight between Batman and Superman, and throughout the trailers we all thought, okay, they're gonna fight maybe 2 or 3 times, but no, they only fight once, and it's near the end. Now that one fight sequence, in my opinion, was so spectacular, so done well. Because Man of Steel, I felt like, okay, it was kind of overdone. It's kind of overdone here too, but I really like what they did with the fight, because you have the one fight, and I believe that fight paid off immensely with Batman and Superman. And it's kind of like you get 3 action set pieces. The Batman and Superman fight, the part where Batman saves Martha, Superman's mom, and then we get the stuff with Doomsday, which I'm about to get into in a minute. So, Doomsday, they kind of set him up in the movie, with, Lex Luthor trying to, learn about the Kryptonian origin, him, using the body, and seeing what happens when Kryptonite affects it, and in a way you can say, yeah, Lex Luthor does create Doomsday, because, hey, trailer giving it away. I'm like, no, you don't. Stuff like that you do need to keep under wraps, and I'm like, are you kidding me? No, you don't show that shit. So that aggravated me. The fact that they showed that in the trailer, and the way how Doomsday was portrayed, Doomsday could have been a lot better, in my opinion. But the fight we get with Doomsday, I felt like that one was a little too much than the Batman v Superman aspect of the action scale pieces. But for what they get, you get this amazing fight between Doomsday, Batman, and Superman, and that's precisely the part where Wonder Woman shows up. And just, using whatever they can to defeat him. He's too powerful, and then, when Superman goes to get the spear because, Lois was going after the spear itself. She's about to drown. And what happens with Lois, Superman's able to get her out. He gets kryptonite, but, the weakness comes into play too. Lois gets him out. And this was the part in the movie where I was like, wait a minute, no. No. Cutting off from that bit, because I want to lead this up into that particular moment. We get Wonder Woman, okay? And with what Gal Gadot was able to do, I think she is one of the best parts of the movie. If Ben Affleck is the top tier, Superman being the second, Gal Gadot comes to a close third. I'm going to say that right now. Gal Gadot is probably the third best thing about this movie. Because her character, she's not the focal point, another focal point of the movie. She's there in like the smallest cameo that she can be in. Or at the very least, like minuscule role. But what she was able to do, and when she was on screen, I think it was probably the best thing to do. Because it's like, she's kind of setting it up like the DCU aspect, but how they went about using her, I thought was done pretty well too. Especially like, with that whole mini setup of the Justice, like when she's like looking up all the files that Bruce Wayne found. And, we see Cyborg, we see Flash, we see Aquaman. I know there's another one. Who else is there? Cyborg, Flash, Aquaman. There's a fourth one. I know there's a fourth one. Someone in the comments gotta remind me, because and Wonder Woman herself is in there too, so yeah. There's that. And the Flash, Wonder Woman, and Aquaman aspects, I'm gonna say they were okay. They were okay at the very best. It wasn't the best executed scene that we got to see for the Justice League setup. Then we get the Cyborg aspect, and I'm like, what the hell was that? Like, I don't care who did that, but that you could have executed that a lot better with Cyborg. You could have. It's like, oh my god, there's this cube, and it can. It turned this man that's about to die into a cyborg, and I'm like, really? That's how you're gonna introduce? That's how we're setting up Cyborg? I'm like, oh god. But that aside, her getting her aspect. She was a warrior in the film, and she's seen a lot of destruction, and she just wants to get away from that. But because there's so much going on in the movie that's referencing to the destruction, and eventually when Doomsday comes, with what she does, she's like, okay, you know what? No, she knows that she can't hold back, and when she joins up in the fight with Batman and Superman, it's done pretty well. Like the line where Batman's like, or Superman's like, "Is she with you? I thought she was with you." Like that to me, everyone in the cinema's like, they chuckle and shit. But this leading up to the point of that scene with Superman, okay? Because Batman and Wonder Woman, they're doing the best they can to, like hold off Doomsday. And there's that scene with Lois and Superman, okay? Like Lois sees just how much of an effect this is having on him. And when Superman says, "I love you," anytime you say something like that in a dire situation, you know somebody's not gonna come back. And the fact that happened, I'm like, oh no, like I knew it was coming. The moment that line was dropped, I'm like, shit. Now, getting introduced to Doomsday, that's already another aspect to the death of Superman itself. But getting that line, because even despite Doomsday, I was like, I'm like, I don't think they're gonna kill him off. I don't think they're going to. But the fact that they did kill him off, I'm like, whoa. Like, that was insane. That was really, really insane. Like, Superman, despite kryptonite being his weakness, he goes up to Doomsday, stabs him in the chest. Doomsday, does the same thing. And they both end up dying. And it's a bittersweet ending because you have the ending of the movie where everybody is like honoring what Superman did. He saved Metropolis, he saved Gotham, and he's being treated as a hero. Which to me, I'm like, okay. Like, some people are gonna have their complaints about that too, but I thought, in my eyes, it was executed pretty well. And I like what they did because they had like two funeral scenes. One with Clark Kent, with his mother and Lois Lane, and with Wonder Woman, Diana and Bruce Wayne, and then one with like the American government, like them like using that as a military tribute, and then the coffin of Superman itself. I was like, yeah, that's cool. That is really interesting. This leading into the aspect of Justice League, with Batman and Wonder Woman just like looking at Superman's grave and just saying like, look, we gotta assemble a team of heroes because he has this feeling something bad's about to happen, and that setup for Justice League, I feel like that was done well. Just the way how that ending played up, and between Wonder Woman and Bruce Wayne, I was like, okay, that was done well, in my personal opinion. And I'm gonna briefly touch back on the fight between Batman and Superman, okay? Because there was a clear condemned conduct winner, and that was Batman. The fact that they went out of their way and showed that Batman won, because I thought it was going to end up in a draw, but the fact that Batman reigned supreme. Again, I love Batman to death, and Man of Steel made me put Superman on like a equal pedestal. But seeing what we got and having that clear winner, I was like, yo, good job. You guys have the balls to do it. You guys have the balls to have a winner, and we got it. And that was great. But yeah, that aside, there's not really much more I can say aside from like the final shot, because you get some of the stuff go on, especially like with Lex Luthor in the prison cell with Batman there, and Batman's kind of just like rambling on about Superman's death and how because of that, like Earth is now vulnerable, and Lex Luthor's like he's like tick tick tick. I'm like yeah, that's how that little scene plays out. But the final shot of the movie, we cut to Superman's grave, and then we have the dirt rising. And if you pay attention to the scene, you can kind of hear a heartbeat go on too. That did kind of kill the movie just a little bit, now that I'm retrospecting it. But I thought overall the movie was a great plus. Like, it was a great plus movie to me. It's everything I wanted. Okay, maybe not everything, but the story aspects and how they set up the Justice League, I thought that was done pretty well. Now, did they overhype on the Batman v Superman aspect? Yeah, they did. But for me, this was one of the movies that I was really looking forward to for, ever since Man of Steel got finished, and the minute they announced it, I was like, oh, this is gonna be epic. I'm not gonna say it was epic, but it was definitely great plus, my personal opinion. And if we want to rally that up to a number standpoint, I would probably say 8.5 out of 10. That's probably where I stand with Batman v Superman. And aside from that, guys, that's pretty much it. Let me also make a quick addendum to this video, because I realized I didn't really talk about Jeremy Irons and his portrayal as Alfred, and another small role, but with what he was given was very different from the other Alfreds we've gotten. Like him trying to assist Bruce, him being a bit more hardcore than the Michael Caine version, and then, the versions from the Tim Burton and Joel Schumacher era. I'll definitely agree on that. And just how Jeremy Irons portrayed Alfred. I thought was spot on for, again, small role that he got, but amazing performance nonetheless. And final subject I want to talk about is whether or not this movie should be for kids. Like, if kids should go see this movie. And I want to see that the film has a very adult vibe to it. Not in the sense of nudity, not in the sense of swearing, because it is rarely about that. The intensity that this movie presents has a adult vibe to it. And kids under the ages of 12 might feel a little bit, not burned out, I should say, but I'd say they find it a little bit dragging because it is a slow movie to get through. And again, that works for me. I don't know how well it works for everybody else, but that's just me. And yeah, that's pretty much the final bit I want to talk about for Batman v Superman. And yeah, if you guys have seen the movie, like I said before, drop your comments down below. What did you think about it? And aside from that, guys, that's pretty much it. I'm Shirag. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more movie news and reviews. And I'll catch you guys later. Peace.